Before Friedrich Nietzsche lost his mind, before the darkness took him, before the world decided he was too dangerous to read in polite company, he understood something about human beings that most people spend their entire lives learning the hard way. He understood that the most brutal wounds you will ever carry were not inflicted by your enemies. They were handed to you, quietly, slowly, by the people you chose to trust. Think about that for a moment. Not strangers. Not rivals. The ones you let in. Nietzsche spent decades watching how humans interact, how they circle each other, how they offer kindness as a mask and collect confessions like currency. And what he concluded was not popular. It was not comfortable. But it was true in the way that only things we refuse to say out loud are true. There are 4 things, 4 specific categories of yourself, that you must never reveal to anyone. Not your partner. Not your oldest friend. Not the person sitting across from you at a table where you finally feel safe. And here is what makes this so difficult to accept: every instinct you have been trained to follow, the instinct to be vulnerable, to be open, to share yourself freely, every single one of those instincts, when applied without wisdom, will destroy you. Tonight, we go through all 4. And by the end, you will not see silence the same way again. The first thing, your true goals. Nietzsche wrote that most men announce their ambitions the way a child announces they want to be a king, loudly, openly, to anyone who will listen. And the world, Nietzsche observed, responds to that kind of honesty not with admiration, but with quiet, patient resistance. The moment you tell someone what you are truly building, what you are truly chasing, 2 forces activate simultaneously. And both of them work against you. The first is jealousy. Not the kind that screams. The kind that smiles. The kind that arrives dressed as concern and speaks in the voice of reason. Are you sure about that? That seems risky. Have you really thought this through? A lot of people have tried something similar and it didn't work out. That voice does not belong to someone who wants you to think more clearly. It belongs to someone who needs you to stay exactly where you are so they do not feel left behind. Jealousy, in its most sophisticated form, never shows its real face. It disguises itself as wisdom, as protection, as love. And the only way it survives is if you give it something to work with. The moment you announce your goal, you hand it the material it needs. The second force is far more direct: competition. People who would never have entered your lane discover it exists the moment you describe it in detail. You name a business you want to start, suddenly someone is interested in the same idea. You describe a career move you're planning, suddenly someone with more resources and better connections is already making calls. Your dream, announced prematurely, becomes an open invitation to the very people who will benefit from reaching it before you do. But here is the layer most people never think about. It is not only competitors and jealous friends who become dangerous when you reveal your goals too early. It is also the quiet psychological damage it does to you. Nietzsche understood this deeply. When you tell someone your ambition before you have achieved it, something subtle happens inside your mind. The act of speaking it out loud, of receiving the nod, the "wow, that sounds amazing," the social acknowledgement, tricks your brain into registering a small version of the reward you haven't yet earned. Studies in modern psychology confirm exactly what Nietzsche saw with pure observation: people who announce their goals feel less motivated to pursue them, because the announcement itself creates a ghost of fulfillment. You told the story. The story felt real. And now part of you believes the work is already done. Silence is not just a social strategy. It is a psychological one. Nietzsche believed that a great ambition must first be proven in private, built in silence, and only revealed once it has already become undeniable reality. Because results cannot be undermined the way intentions can. A finished building cannot be talked out of existing. A dream you have not yet built absolutely can, and it will be, the moment the wrong person hears about it at the wrong time. Watch the most effective people you have ever encountered. Not the loudest ones. The effective ones. They almost never speak about what they are building while they are still building it. They appear, seemingly out of nowhere, with something already complete. No previews. No check-ins. No asking for approval or validation along the way. They simply disappear into their work, and then they surface, and by then, it is too late for anyone to stop them. That is not arrogance. That is the discipline of a mind that has learned the difference between sharing and surrendering. Guard your goals not because you are afraid of people, but because you understand that silence is simply the superior strategy, and the moment you master it, you become significantly harder to stop. The second thing, the depth of your pain. This is the one that cuts hardest, because everything in modern culture tells you the opposite. We are told to be vulnerable. We are told that sharing pain is strength. We are told that bottling things up is dangerous, that silence around suffering is toxic, that the path to healing runs directly through confession. And there is truth buried inside all of that, but the part that nobody says out loud, the part Nietzsche saw with uncomfortable clarity, is this: it only works with the right people. And most people are not the right people. Nietzsche understood a dark human instinct that we rarely name in polite conversation. There are people, and you have almost certainly met them, who do not want your suffering to end. Not because they are evil by design, but because your pain gives them something they cannot get any other way: purpose, relevance, a sense of superiority that they would lose the moment you recovered and no longer needed them. Watch carefully the next time you confide in someone about something real. Not a surface complaint, but something that actually costs you. Notice who leans in with a little too much interest. Notice whose voice warms, genuinely warms, as your weakness becomes visible. Notice who asks a few more questions than the situation requires, who circles back to the subject even when you have moved on, who seems almost reluctant to accept that you might be doing better now. That warmth is not always love. Sometimes, it is hunger. And it does not always announce itself dramatically. Sometimes it shows up as the friend who gives advice that subtly keeps you dependent on their advice, the partner who is most loving precisely when you are most lost, the colleague who checks in on you most frequently right after you have had a setback. Not because something is necessarily wrong with them as a person, but because your pain has accidentally become their comfort. Your weakness has given them a role they enjoy playing. And roles, once comfortable, are hard to give up. Nietzsche went further than this. He pointed out that even in cases where the person listening to your pain is genuinely kind, genuinely good, the act of showing suffering too freely, too widely, creates its own slow damage. It trains you to process your interior life through the reactions of others. You stop knowing how you actually feel until someone else reflects it back to you. You begin to confuse being seen with being healed. You turn your pain into a performance, and performances require audiences, and audiences are unreliable, and suddenly your recovery is hostage to whether or not the right people showed up to witness it. Real healing does not require an audience. Real strength is not performed for sympathy. It is carried quietly, processed privately, and shared only with the rare few who have proven, not through words but through consistent behavior over time, that they can hold your truth without filing it away for future use. This is not the same as suppression. Nietzsche was not advocating for burying your pain until it becomes poison. He was making a precise distinction between processing and broadcasting. You are allowed to feel everything. You are not obligated to announce it. The version of you that suffers in silence and works through it alone is not weaker than the version that tells everyone. In almost every case, it is significantly stronger. Because it has learned to be its own witness. It has learned that its healing does not require permission or validation from anyone. Suffering shared with the wrong person does not make you lighter, it makes them more powerful. And every time you forget that, you pay for it in ways you do not always immediately recognize. The third thing, what you are about to do. This is where strategy begins, and where most people fail before they have even taken a single step. Nietzsche had a very specific kind of contempt, not for weakness exactly, but for what he called unnecessary transparency. The man who explains himself before he acts. The person who describes their plans in detail to the very people their plans might affect. Not because explanation is cowardly, but because in a world that does not always want you to rise, announcing your next move is nothing short of tactical suicide. Think about it as plainly as possible. If you tell someone exactly what you are planning, exactly how you intend to change your circumstances, your career, your relationship, your life, you give them something incredibly dangerous. You give them time. Time to prepare. Time to position themselves. Time to have a quiet word with the right people before you are ready to move. Time to plant seeds of doubt about you in places you cannot see. And by the time you finally step forward, believing you are making a bold move, the ground has already been quietly shifted beneath you. This does not require malice on the other person's part. It does not require a conspiracy. All it requires is that they have an interest, any interest at all, in things staying roughly as they are. A coworker who benefits from your current level. A partner who is comfortable with the version of you that exists right now. A friend whose identity is partly built on being ahead of you in some way. They do not have to plot against you consciously. They simply respond, naturally, to the information you have given them. And their natural response, more often than not, works against your momentum. Nietzsche also observed something even more subtle than sabotage. He noticed that when people explain their plans out loud, especially to someone whose opinion matters to them, they begin unconsciously editing those plans to fit the reaction they receive. You watch someone's face as you describe your idea. Their eyebrows move slightly. There is a half-second of hesitation before they say, "That's interesting." And without realizing it, you start softening the idea. Pulling back the most ambitious edges, making it smaller, safer, more palatable, not because you genuinely reconsidered, but because you exposed it too early to an audience that was not ready for the full version. Your plan, shared prematurely, gets shaped by people who were never supposed to shape it. Nietzsche's understanding of power was deeply rooted in the idea of the completed act. Not the announced intention. Not the explained strategy. The act, already finished, presented to the world as fact. Because a completed act cannot be argued with. It exists, and existence, Nietzsche believed, is the only argument that cannot be defeated. The person who moves without warning cannot be preemptively stopped. The person who narrates their strategy in real time is handing their opponents a schedule, a map, and an invitation to interfere, all at once. You do not owe anyone a preview of your future. Let your results arrive without warning. Let people be surprised, genuinely surprised, by what you become. Because surprise, in this context, is not just satisfying. It is proof that no one was able to organize against you in advance. It is proof that you moved faster and quieter than the resistance. That is not dishonesty. That is precision. And in a world where most people telegraph every move they are about to make, it is one of the rarest and most powerful disciplines you can develop. The fourth thing, what you cannot control in yourself. This is the deepest one. The most dangerous one. The one Nietzsche returned to again and again across decades of thinking about human nature, power, and self-mastery. Every human being has a trigger. A specific word. A specific tone of voice. A specific form of dismissal, of being ignored, of being laughed at, of being compared unfavorably to someone else, that bypasses all reason and intelligence and goes directly to something raw, unguarded, and completely exposed inside them. And most people, without ever realizing it, reveal that trigger constantly. Through their reactions. Through the moments when composure suddenly collapses. Through the particular topics they avoid, the defenses they throw up too quickly, the silences that are just a half-second too long before they recover. People are watching all of this. More carefully than you realize. Nietzsche understood something that most people find genuinely unsettling when they first encounter it. Once someone knows what truly controls you, not what you say controls you, not the public version of your weaknesses, but the real one, the specific internal wound that makes you immediately irrational, they no longer need to be smarter than you, or stronger, or more capable. They only need to know where the button is. And then they press it whenever it is convenient for them. This is the most elegant and invisible form of power one person can hold over another. Not force. Not manipulation you can name and point to. Just knowledge. The quiet, accumulated knowledge of exactly which lever, pulled at exactly the right moment, will make you lose composure, make you say something you will regret, make you act in a way that undermines your own position and confirms whatever narrative they want to build about you. And here is what makes it truly dangerous: the people who do this best almost never look like they are doing it. They simply make a comment. Ask a certain kind of question. Bring up a particular subject in a particular way, and you react, and everyone in the room sees you react, and suddenly they look calm, and you look unstable, and the entire dynamic has shifted without a single honest confrontation taking place. Nietzsche called this kind of observable psychological lever the most valuable intelligence a person could gather about another human being. And he noted, with some bitterness, that most people hand this intelligence over completely voluntarily. In arguments, when they lose control and reveal exactly what truly offends them. In moments of intimacy, when they confess their deepest insecurities to someone who is not yet safe enough to hold them. In their daily behavior, the flinch, the tension, the over-explanation, that broadcasts their sensitivities to anyone patient enough to observe. But here is where Nietzsche's answer becomes something more than defensive strategy. He did not say, hide the trigger and pretend it doesn't exist. He said something far more demanding. Find it yourself, first. Before anyone else does. Go into the uncomfortable interior of your own psychology, locate the exact place where you lose control, and work on it, not to eliminate feeling, but to eliminate the involuntary reaction that makes you readable. Because there is a crucial difference between feeling something and being controlled by it. The person who has found their own breaking point and done the private work of understanding it cannot be easily broken by someone else pressing on it. They feel the pressure. They recognize the attempt. But they do not perform the reaction that was expected of them. And the moment you stop performing the expected reaction, the lever stops working. And the person holding it has suddenly lost their only real advantage. This is what Nietzsche meant by self-mastery. Not the performance of strength. Not the appearance of being unaffected. The genuine, internal work of understanding your own architecture well enough that no one else can operate it without your knowledge. The world is full of people who are brilliant in theory and completely manageable in practice, because they never did this work. Because they assumed that intelligence or willpower or good intentions would protect them. They do not. Only self-knowledge does. The kind that is earned in private, not displayed in public. Know what controls you before someone else does, because in every situation where that knowledge exists, either you hold it, or someone else does. And the difference between those two outcomes is not small. 4 things. 4 doors you have been leaving open, and now you know exactly where they are. Your ambition. The goals you are still building, still protecting, still proving, share them with no one until the results make the announcement for you. Your pain. The wounds, the fears, the places where you are still not whole, carry them carefully, share them rarely, and only ever with those who have earned that trust through time and action, not through warmth and curiosity. Your next move. The shift you are preparing, the decision you have already made in silence, let it arrive as a completed fact, not a previewed intention. Because the world can argue with a plan. It cannot argue with something that already exists. And what breaks you? The specific internal lever you have never mapped, never mastered, never taken back from the hands of whoever currently holds it. Find it. Work on it. Own it before anyone else does. These are not 4 separate lessons. They are one truth wearing 4 different faces. And the truth is this: the less readable you are, the less controllable you become. And the less controllable you become, the closer you are to actually free. Nietzsche spent his life writing for the person who was willing to hear what the world was too polite to say. And what he wanted that person to understand above everything else is simple. You are not obligated to be understood. You are not obligated to be transparent. You are not obligated to make yourself easy. You are only obligated to become what you are capable of becoming. And that work, the real work, happens in silence. Guard what is yours. Not out of fear. Out of understanding. Because power is not loud. Power is not desperate. And power is never, not even for a moment, fully revealed.